Welcome to CinemaSlice, where we look at some minor moments from the movies and take a little walk into the woods to find out what makes them tick. This time, we're taking a look at Winter's Bone, cartoons, and men. I'm not Mr. W, so do with that information as you will. Winter's Bone is a 2010 drama written and directed by American independent filmmaker Deborah Granick and based on the novel by Daniel Woodrell. It tells the story of Ree Dolly, played in her breakthrough role by Jennifer Lawrence. Ree is a teenage girl from the Missouri Ozarks searching for her missing drug dealer father who has skipped bail just so she can keep her house from being repossessed and stop her family from being rendered homeless. So cheerful stuff then. Director Deborah Granick said Winter's Bone is a feminist film about an anti-feminist world. A pretty bold claim for an Oscar-nominated film. So is it? Is it really a feminist film? Well, for starters, it's directed by a woman and it has a female protagonist. Good start. And while it is based on a novel written by a man, the script underwent several key changes from the book, cutting out references to Ree's proto-lesbian relationship with her friend Gail, and a scene where she bathes in the wild. Removing those scenes suggests that Ree has been desexualized by Granick, removing any aspects of the film that could reflect male obsessions with sexualizing women. Unless that is, you're really into big thick jumpers with pictures of deer on them. Animism. So far, so feminist. Another useful metric is the Bechdel Test. The Bechdel Test was inspired by cartoonist Alison Bechdel's 1985 tongue-in-cheek comic strip, The Rule, which has become a basic measure to see if women are fairly represented in a film. Spoiler, they usually aren't. For a film to pass the Bechdel Test, it must simply contain the following. 1. It must have 2 named female characters. 2. Who talk to each other. 3. About something which isn't a man. Granted, this isn't a scientific measure of how good or how feminist a film is, but the test is designed to highlight the overwhelmingly patriarchal nature of Hollywood cinema by demonstrating simply how much of American cinematic product privileges male voices and silences or even ignores female points of view. A criticism which cannot be levelled at Winter's Bone, which only ever shows us Ree's point of view, even when the temptation is to follow other, more traditionally exciting avenues. How about we touch on the work of British film theorist Laura Mulvey? In her essay, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, she established the idea of cinema's male gaze. See every other video about feminism on the internet. Mulvey posits that the existence of men as primary designers of the language of film since its inception has meant that it's become a male-coded medium. In simple terms, men made it for men, mainly. Because of this coding, Mulvey suggests that cinema depicts women in a heterosexual manner, presenting them primarily as sexual objects for the male viewer. The male gaze has 3 perspectives which overwhelm and subdue female voices. 1. The man behind the camera. 2. The male characters within the film's cinematic representations. And 3. The spectator gazing at the image. So how does this apply, or rather not apply, to Winter's Bone? Let's start with the first perspective, the man behind the camera. Ree is not introduced or shown at any point in a sexualized way by the camera. From her costume, baggy, cheap and second-hand clothing, bruising, understated makeup, to the relatively sober and staid framing of the character, frequently in long shot, walking, medium shot when involved in conversations, and close-ups that foreground her point of view rather than disembodying and objectifying her physique. The director, Deborah Granick, does not have a typical male gaze trained on her female lead. Number 2. The male characters in the film. They never look at Ree in a sexualised way. Teardrop stands by and looks after her as an uncle. Baskin is too concerned with Ree's father to take much notice of her. And Thump has just beaten her up like a man, although he has the southern decency to get some women to do it. Unlike many women in Hollywood cinema, Ree has no romantic interests in the course of the film, and is never naked or sexualised in any way. Remember, any scenes that could have led to this were removed in the adaptation from the book. And number 3, the spectator or the audience, us. We are only ever shown Ree's perspective. Her voice and concerns are heard. She is not positioned as some Propian princess, but as the hero. In terms of genre, the film is closer to a detective story where Ree is the detective. She is the protagonist, and at no point does the audience feel like she is a prize for the male characters to claim. So we're looking good on the feminist film front, but is the world of the film really anti-feminist as Granick claims? Let's look at some of the male characters in the film. The bail bondsman, a man who has the power to take Ree's house away and leave her family stranded. Sheriff Baskin, a man in the police force, a dominant force in American society, but arguably not in the community of the Ozarks. And Thump Milton, the man who seems to run this Ozark community. These 3 characters clearly show how the positions of power within the world of the narrative are filled by men, hinting to a clearly patriarchal society. By representing business, the law, and family, they show that Ree has to contend with male powers whenever she needs to accomplish anything. An additional minor character is the army recruitment officer, a man who presents Ree with the conundrum of joining the army but abandoning her younger siblings, who, as an older sister, she has become the primary caregiver for. If she were a male, it's unlikely she would still be at home caring for them. This additional burden, and her repeated difficulty in gaining assistance from patriarchal structures, clearly shows Granick's assertion of the anti-feminist world is fully represented in the film. How about other female characters in the film? Well, Gail, Ree's friend, clearly represents the traditional female path in Ozark life. She's married and had a child at a young age and is always now subservient to her husband, asking permission to use the van and living seemingly trapped in the bedroom. Ree doesn't seem to fancy that, as we see in the opening scene. No, Ree seems pretty hell-bent on doing what she wants and not following the path the world and the men have laid out for her. So there we have it, definitely a feminist film and set in a fairly anti-feminist world. Case closed.
Well, about that. Remember that quote? A feminist film about an anti-feminist world. We said it came from Deborah Granick. It's me, Mr. W. And, well, we lied. By accident, but we've got to fess up. It's an excellent quote, most excellent, and perfect to use in essays and discussions about the film, but no one involved in the film actually said that, ever. Our own internal sense of journalistic integrity led us on a bit of a merry chase. You see, we first encountered this from some information from the exam board about the film. There, the information sheet about the film clearly says Granick notes and then the quote. We were a bit curious to see if there was anything else from the interview that this quote clearly came from that could be of use. So we looked, and looked, and looked, and nothing much turned up until we came across a Google Books hit for the new woman's film, Femme-Centric Movies for Smart Chicks, which had the quote in it, sort of. In the book it says that Winter's Bone is described this way in an online blog dedicated to film analysis, which didn't really help. It could still have been Granick who said it, but it's far less likely, so we kept digging, and we found the blog. Here it is. A short-lived film blog with some fine, highbrow writing, admittedly, but not writing from Deborah Granick or even an interview. No. Quellum? C. Wellum is our culprit, so there. What does that mean? Well, the quote's an accurate description. We proved that. Does it matter that Granick didn't say it? A bit. It's a fine, short, sharp summation of something about this film which is great. Something which makes it unique and interesting. But as far as authorial intent goes, well, who cares about that anyway?
This episode of CinemaSlice was written and narrated by myself, Charlie Travers, as well as Mr. W, and for a change, was edited by the wonderful Austin Jones, who you can check out at the links below. Please like and subscribe, and if you've got any suggestions for videos you'd like to see, leave them in the comments down below. See you next time.